So one of the things we get asked quite a lot at Scale Beyond is a site redesign ever the right option? So you've got your e-commerce store, you want to improve it. Is doing a redesign piece in terms of the UX and the visual appeal, is that ever the right choice? And you'll quite often see people online who work in similar spheres to us in terms of Crow and split testing, who obviously advocate test and learn like we do, saying things like, oh, site redesign is never the right option. You should never do that. You should always just test changes, never redesign. That's the only way to improve your e-commerce site. That's the right way to do it. So I thought it'd be interesting on this video today to answer the question, is the site redesign ever the right option in e-commerce? So as a Crow and CVO and split testing focused digital agency, which is really the core of what we do at Scale Beyond and really where our 20 years of expertise lies, you might expect me to say, no, redesign is never the right option. Test and learn is always the right way. Forget your redesign, just get testing. But the reality is that's not the case, and the opposite is actually true. The answer is yes. There are many, many valid scenarios where a redesign is actually the right route. And I think when people post online that redesigns are never the right route, you should always just split test, they're coming at it from, I think, a position of one, a bit of naivety in terms of the commercial awareness of how that actually fits for a lot of businesses. But two, from a position of inexperience where they just don't have the breadth of experience we do, working client side, working agency side with a huge range of brands at different stages of their e-commerce journey to really understand where a UX redesign can fit in. So what are some of the reasons that we would advise doing a full redesign rather than split testing? Well, reason one is really to do with the scale of your e-commerce business and where you're up to in terms of size. So at Scale Beyond, for split testing, we recommend all our clients are processing at least 50 orders per day. And we won't take any clients on who are processing less than that, because the honest reality is, and some split testing agencies might not be honest about this if they take you on, but unless you're processing at least 50 orders per day, ideally more than 100, you'll never collect enough data to actually generate real repeatable results. So you're wasting your time basically if you're running split testing on a site smaller than that. But at the same time, you can still be doing millions in turnover, and you still obviously want to improve your site and have a decent site and take a step forward from where you are now. So there's nothing stopping you, and there's no reason at all not to look at that and go, actually, we can still improve a number of areas. If we work with an expert UX agency, we can capture a lot of changes at the same time. We can improve the look and feel, and suddenly a redesign, which really won't cost a huge amount in relation to the turnover of your business, actually becomes a really valuable and valid proposition. I think the second reason that's really important that a lot of Crow agencies don't understand is that it's very difficult to test and learn your way from one distinct brand and look and feel to a completely different look and feel within split testing. So if I give you a couple of examples of well-known sites, if you look at Amazon, who went from this a few years ago to this, and then a brand like ASOS, who went from this to this. And then lastly, for a bit of a more recent one, let's have a look at Gymshark, who looked like this a few years ago, believe it or not, and they went to this. So you can see when you look at those examples, massively different branding, and that is not a case of test and learn. They have gone any of those sites from that first image I showed to the second image by testing and learning, because it's just too much of a difference. If you think about that practically in terms of how you'd split test that, how would you do it? If you changed the header or the footer at one time and left the rest of the site the same, it would just look ridiculous with a mix of fonts and a mix of branding and styling. If you just changed one page at a time, it would be incredibly disorientating for users if the home page followed one brand theme and then the product page was completely different. There's no effective way really to test and learn that. You can test the whole site at the same time, but that's a huge technical overhead for a lot of businesses. And why would you do that really if you're confident in the new design and you've done the research to back it up? So I think when you're making a leap in design and look and feel, it's often very difficult practically and quite unnecessary really to test that, because it's not really going to tell you anything in relation to your existing site brand look and feel. And often as well, it's quite difficult to measure some of those changes against actual on-site metrics that you're measuring with split testing. It kind of comes over time with improved brand awareness, legitimacy of the brand and the feel, can take a while to show in your metrics. So I think the final reason, which is always interesting to mention as well, is that even if you've got enough traffic for split testing, you might have someone like us look at your site, and there might be a lot of things we want to change, and we want to change off the bat. And you might have enough traffic and enough orders coming through to split test all those ideas individually, but realistically it could take many months or years potentially to get through everything and make all the changes we want to make. And that's safe in a way, and that's great, and you can measure each change individually, but there's probably other things you want to do. You want to get on and grow your e-commerce business. You don't want to be waiting 2 years for the basics. So that's when a UX redesign can actually really work well as well, because that allows you to capture a lot of changes simultaneously. Now, obviously, if you don't know anything about UX or user behavior or CRO, then doing a redesign is a bad idea, because you won't know for sure that you're making changes that are positive. Whereas if you work with an expert partner like us, obviously, we're bringing in decades of experience to make sure the changes we're proposing are right and are going to drive improvements. And ultimately, the proof is in the pudding in terms of overall performance after those improvements are made. So I think there's definitely a case for a lot of businesses, even if you are at a scale where you can run split testing, the fact you can capture a lot of changes simultaneously in one batch through a UX redesign, and also probably improve a little bit around the look and feel and so on at the same time too, can make a redesign a viable option for sure. I think there's a couple of final things that I just want to throw in as well that are really important to consider when thinking about a redesign. So as I mentioned, at Scale Beyond, CRO split testing and CVO and optimization and continuous test and learn is really fundamental to what we do. We're massive advocates of that. And when I'm saying sometimes a redesign is the right option, that's not me saying, oh, don't split test. You should absolutely be split testing and testing and learning continuously when you can. We're huge advocates of that, and that's the majority of what we do. But I think as well, it's important to understand that sometimes redesign is the right option, as I've mentioned, but at the same time, it's never the right option as a continuous thing. So I think there are certain points you'll reach in your business where you look at your site and you go, okay, this does need a major overhaul for whatever reason. And every brand goes through that. When you hit a point, maybe you're replatforming, maybe you haven't updated the design for a few years, and you're like, actually, we can make a big step forward here. That's when redesign is useful. But it isn't something you should be doing every month or even every year. It's a periodic thing at key points in your e-commerce growth journey where a redesign can make sense. So I think that's really important to clarify as well. And I think the last thing related to this I would say as well is that we always look at Scale Beyond as design as the starting point of the journey, really. So when we build a new site design as a UX piece, we always include as standard a free guide of split testing ideas that we would recommend you test on the new design. And often obviously businesses come back to us to do that if they're large enough, but if not, that's something you can think about in future. So when you're thinking about design, it's not the end, it's the start. It's the start of the new journey with a better, more solid base with a lot of foundation and thought that's gone into it to give you a really solid starting point from a UX point of view. But it's definitely not the end, it's the start of the test and learn journey. You're just putting yourself in a much better position initially by getting some expert help with that UX redesign. So I think they're two really important points as well just to include. Great, so that's pretty much it for this video, and hopefully that's been useful. So like I say, I think there's a temptation when you look online, and people like us who are big advocates of test and learn and split testing, and people whose business really depends on that, which is very similar to us at Scale Beyond, can often say, look, it's always test and learn. A redesign is never the right option. And I see that quite frequently online on LinkedIn and X and so on, people posting things like that. But hopefully you can now see there is always a valid use case for redesign. And a lot of businesses fall into the boat where it makes sense to consider it as an option. So I think that's why at Scale Beyond, as a CVO focused agency, UX design is a really important part of what we do. So obviously split testing and test and learn is a massive piece, and that's really where our core expertise is. But we also have a lot of expertise on UX design as well, and we quite frequently do projects around that for a variety of different clients. So it's always something worth considering, and I certainly wouldn't rule it out if you're looking at how can I improve my e-commerce site, particularly if you're not at the scale yet to start running split testing. So if you're interested in learning more about our UX design services, there's a link below, and feel free to drop us a line and we'd love to have a chat. Thanks for watching.